Welcome to Be Hero Fights. I'm Tom,
And I'm Brian.
and we're here to discuss
Or Fuss.
over what's new
What's trending?
or what is to come
Giggity.
in pop culture.
All right, guys. So last week we talked about video game adaptations to film and why a majority of them are not good. We did talk about a few that were good, such as Sonic and things like that. So go back and watch that episode.
And
But, yep, go ahead.
as I say, a big portion of that was mostly focusing on why it's so difficult.
And as we were going through there, we had a long list of movies. And I say we as in Tom because I don't do any research. Had a long list of movies of ones that are video game adaptations that were just not good. And
Uh, and that we didn't get to talk about.
yeah, so we kind of wanted to expand on that episode and talk about those movies in particular. So this is going to be a list of horrible video game adaptations. And I have no clue what's on this list. Tom did all the research on this. And so he's going to go through the list. I'm going to react and or more likely rant about each of these.
And yeah, mostly horrible. There are a couple that are arguably fine, but you'll find out. Let's start with actually just one that I just really want to talk about. Blood Rain.
So, Blood Rain. If you guys have never played, Blood Rain was a game that came out on the PlayStation 2. I think it was 2002 when it came out. And essentially, you are a vampire who gets turned right around the time of World War II, and you essentially go through the whole game doing nothing but being a vampire killing Nazis, which is a fantastic concept for it.
Naturally.
And she had some of the coolest weapons. She had these kind of like sort of bladed tonfas, nightsticks, that were also like strapped under her arm at the same time that she can use to like slice up people and things like that. It was insanely cool. Um, and the game was just a blood and guts slasher that was just super fun. Um, it is not child appropriate per se. They don't show anything, but they might as well have. So, but it was a fantastic game.
Yeah. And they made
The movie,
3 movies out of it.
the movie, on the other hand, essentially tries and takes the concept of what the game had and expand on it, where they gave Rain a little more backstory and tried to give her a little more purpose and things like that. Like the blades that she gets are from a friend of hers from like a circus or something or a gypsy show or something like that. And that was like doing them as like an artistic thing, and she was killed by the Nazis. The actress Christina Loken, um, who, if that sounds familiar for you guys, she's also another bad movie, Terminator 3, where she plays the female Terminator, is in this movie. And she was a model before this movie. In fact, I think she did this movie either right before or right after Terminator 3. And she is a great model. Um, Not a strong actress. Nobody in this movie was fantastic, and Ben Kingsley was in this movie, and he chewed up the scene well. But this movie was, uh, they might as well just put this movie on Skinamax, honestly, because it was that close to being that one. But it was such a horrible movie that it was almost worth watching. I'll give you
So
an example.
go ahead. Give your
This is
example.
a perfect movie for a 14-year-old boy to watch.
This movie is, I guess, this series. So I actually haven't seen the first one. I saw the second one back in my college days. It was just on Netflix, and I was just binging the horror section of Netflix. So I saw the second one. It's campy as hell. Not even necessarily in a good way. It's not like Evil Dead fun campy. It's just it's a little painful to watch, but you know, I watched it, and I don't know, maybe 70, 80 minutes. It was a very short movie, but what I do know is the last like 10 minutes of the movie was literally her sitting in a throne and then thinking and replaying. They literally just replayed every kill scene that happened throughout the entire movie in a montage of blood and guts and gore, and it was wonderful. What else can I say? I
But
like
the
gratuitous gore.
right? Well, the adaptations for these movies were not very good. They didn't
No.
expand the story. They give you much for the story. And honestly, there's so much there that could be done.
Mhm.
In fact, we did talk about this one a little bit before we got on here, kind of as the one as the proof of concept for this episode.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the IMDb list, and I got super excited for a second. Like, oh my gosh, there was a TV series of this. I would love a TV series of this. There was not. There was a character who was called Blood Rain, who was a wrestler in a Mexican series for one episode. I was looking up on IMDb, but I got
Hell yeah.
super excited.
That's great. All right, I've got a ton here, so let's move on.
Yep.
We're gonna move on to a franchise that actually was pretty successful. And now it's been rebooted. We're gonna talk about for a second Resident Evil.
Okay.
Resident Evil, we had 6 movies, and now we have a reboot. I will admit, like, so I've played a little bit of Resident Evil 1, I played a little bit of Code Veronica, and I beat Resident Evil 4. Um, it's a great video game franchise. I was more of a Silent Hill player, but can't knock Resident Evil as a video game franchise. The movies, the 6 movies, they're terrible. They have nothing to do with the franchise. They just ripped off the name and made zombie movies, and I love them. They are guilty pleasures of mine. The only thing that I can knock them for is the fact that they stole the Resident Evil name.
So I'm kind of in the same way. I love Resident Evil. I love that one over Silent Hill for myself. And I played the snot out of the Resident Evil games. And when I knew that there was going to be a Resident Evil movie coming out, and with Mila Jovovich, who I loved, also because I loved her in Fifth Element.
Mhm.
Hell, I loved her in Cuffs, which was one of the first movies she was ever in. Um, and I was super excited. And then I also had a mad crush on Michelle Rodriguez at the time when the first movie came out, and she was in that one. By side tangent, she was also in Blood Rain too. Um, but I got super excited for this movie. And don't get me wrong, when Resident Evil came out, though it was not a faithful adaptation, it was still a fun movie to watch.
The first 2 especially, actually.
Yeah, but it kind of just went so off the rails, and where you don't have any of the characters from the original like game series. And mind you, the Resident Evil games kept expanding on characters. We're up to what is Resident Evil 8 or 9 now. Can't
I
remember which
think
one Village
I
is.
think 8.
I think Village is 8, yeah. And in that, it's a whole new character, right? But you still have Chris involved in that game series, Chris Redfield. You don't get any of that until the third movie, second or third movie. Well, I think you meet Jill Valentine at one point.
That's the second movie, and she's just like a damsel in distress that entire movie.
Yeah,
Very disappointing to what her character actually is. The third movie,
I think you get Claire at some point in time, which is played by Ali Later.
yeah, I think that's
Um,
right. Fourth movie, we get Chris. The fifth
yeah,
movie, we get Leon. Every time they introduce one of these characters, it's always like, really?
yeah,
The
yeah.
name. That's what you did.
I'm pretty sure that all these movies were made because the director and producer of these movies was Mila Jovovich's husband
Yeah.
at the time. I think they've now been divorced since the series came out,
Are
but
they?
I think so. Don't quote me on that.
Because
Okay.
did I thought they were still together because they made Monster Hunter. Same team.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're still married.
I mean, well,
But
I guess you're not wrong.
uh,
I'll
I'm
look
pretty
that up
sure the whole
later.
reason that they did all these movies is literally for a reason to see or to have him film his wife naked. Because the
Well,
majority of these movies are Mila Jovovich naked. And again, do not get me
well,
wrong,
when she says no in the bedroom,
right?
you make it public.
I mean, yeah. Big bada boom. Uh,
She is, according to this, still married to Paul W.S. Anderson. Yep,
there you go.
according to
But yeah,
Google.
like, oh man, and again, do not get me wrong. I love Mila Jovovich, and she's fantastic. And Paul W. Anderson makes a good schlock movie. And that's what these are. But they are not faithful adaptations.
By any means. And let's go ahead and just continue with this theme real quick with Monster Hunter. We already talked about it for a second. Another one. I actually didn't hate the movie. I never played the game. Didn't hate the movie, but I know for a fact that it is not Monster Hunter. There are things that were enjoyable. The one thing that was not, by far, the most unbelievable thing in this movie, out of everything that happened in this sci-fi fantasy nonsense adventure, by far the most unbelievable thing was the bar of chocolate that she had carrying around in her pocket in like 100-degree desert, and it didn't melt. After like a day, still solid chocolate. That is by far the most unbelievable thing I may have ever seen in a movie ever. I don't know. What do you think?
The only way I can see that happening is if her character was like some of the girls I had in high school whose thighs were that cold. Um, but honestly, I haven't had a chance to watch that one. I just haven't gotten myself to watch it. I've played Monster World or the Monster Hunter games, and they have such an expanded world of like story that could be there. And the story that they tell instead is army guys who suddenly find a magic portal to this realm and they have to take out a thing to do a thing. And this is all coming from the trailer, by the way. I have no clue exactly what happens,
No,
but I
you got
believe
it.
that's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. None of
And
which is part of the lore of the
yeah,
entire
at all
universe.
whatsoever. So, how did they think that that was going to play? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me.
But
And because you
that's
had such a beauty, like part of the beauty of Monster World is the or Monster Hunter games is the world that it's in, right?
yeah.
Is it's expanded world that you have because you have so many great characters and types of characters that you can play from, and it is such like a beautiful manga style of game, like where it comes from a Japanese and Asian storytelling, where you have animal characters who are anthropomorphic and everything else. Then you don't do any of that.
Yeah, and like it's not like the cast was great, and everyone acted on point. Everything was done fine. The execution of what it was fine. It just it's not Monster Hunter World. And I think that's kind of a staple of Paul W.S. Anderson is he just like takes a name and he takes a screenshot of like a cool thing. He probably just looks it up on Google Images, Monster Hunter World. Oh, cool. Let's send the military after him. That's kind of I don't understand why he does what he does or the reasoning behind it, but that's just kind of how he is. Let's move on.
Real quick, I
um
just had an image of Paul W. Anderson going to write a screenplay for something. He goes, "Hmm, Monster Hunter. Let's go look it up on Wiki." Okay.
yeah, for real, and then only reading the first sentence. uh
Mhm.
all right, let's talk about actually Prince of Persia. This was an interesting movie. A fine teen flick back before teen flicks really took off. um
Over and bring back Ben Kingsley
it
again.
really was just like Aladdin. Aladdin
Well, I
2
mean, this
2.0.
the story of the games is essentially that. I once again pushing my age. Had actually had the ability of playing both the original platformer version of Prince of Persia and the remake Prince of Persia, which was a staple in video games. Right? It gave you some of the great abilities. It was one of the first games to tell the story as a narrative. Like you find out at the end of the game that the narrative of the story, everything that's happening in the story, is you telling somebody else the story of what happened.
Yeah.
It might be the first game in an open world style where you have the ability of doing the running on walls and the climbing across things. Like everything that's pretty much a staple now to an open world game
Yeah.
came from Prince of Persia. The game itself had the great ability of like when you're about to die or about to do something bad, you can rewind time to not do the thing
Yeah.
and stuff like that. The story was so good, and in the movie, you had aspects of that. Um, the Prince of Persia himself was played by Jake Gyllenhaal, which was
Which, can
quite
I just
interesting.
say, before he was good at acting?
Before he was really known at all. The main bad guy, the Vizier, that's the bad guy in the game, is played by Ben Kingsley, because Ben Kingsley.
Yes.
Um, and I can't remember who the actress was
I
that plays the princess, but it obviously wasn't a huge thing. Um, the biggest problem for me with Prince of Persia the movie is I do not remember it. Like I know I've seen it. I've probably seen it more than once, but I just don't remember it, and I don't remember enjoying the movie. Like it
it,
was,
it's one I would imagine my kids would love about right now. 8 and
yeah,
4, right? I think they would have a great time with it. But yeah, I was fairly young. I really don't remember how old. I don't even remember when it came out. I don't remember how old I was. I remember watching it, and I remember just it was fine.
yeah.
That's about all I remember. I do remember not liking Jake Gyllenhaal because I just didn't like him in general from Donnie Darko and The Day After Tomorrow, which were the only other two things I knew him from. It's like I said, this was before he knew how to act. um, I don't know. Kind of a yeah. I think you're right. Kind of a throwaway movie. It
The sad
just
part is, in my mind, I remember this being fairly faithful to the story, to the conceptual concept of the story, but because it didn't really wow you, it didn't expand on anything. And there's so much opportunity in that style of game
yeah
that you could have done something amazing, and they didn't. It felt lackluster. They also felt like they hit some of the similar beats to Aladdin. And if you're making an adaptation, but have the ability of either expanding or changing up things in a way that would still feel spiritually the same,
yeah
which is what you need to do with a good adaptation to a video game, they could have done that where it didn't make it feel so Aladdin.
yeah. And it really was way too Aladdin. That much I do remember. But I still have a lot of movies, so we're gonna go into a speed mode here, and I'm just gonna fire off some.
Okay.
Brian, Double Dragon.
Oh my god, you picked the wrong one for me to go quick. Uh, so I love the crap out of this movie, but not because of what it was. This has nothing to do with the games at all. In the games, you're running around as co-op characters as a run and gunner game.
Great
That
games.
was 2D run and gunner, but like in the same style like Contra.
Hmm.
But
And like
you
Turtles in Time.
yeah, exactly. But you really didn't do much. On this one, they expand it where, the boys have to get a medallion. It's relative to Rome. Robert Patrick's in this. The T-1000 from Terminator 2.
John Claude Van
Is it
Damme.
John Claude Van Damme's done this?
Isn't he? I thought he was. Am I thinking of something else?
Or did he play their dad? He might have played their dad now that I think about this.
I
But
could have sworn
Alyssa
he was him.
Milano was in this movie. Scott
Uh,
Wolf from
you're
Party of
right.
Five was in
He's
this movie.
not. I can't. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
But like this movie is 100% a 90s movie. And then that's what it feels like the whole way through. It is not a faithful adaptation, but if you want to enjoy a really bad 90s movie that just it's what a 60-year-old screenwriter in the 90s thought that 90 teenagers would do. Proceed.
All right. Need for Speed.
Oh,
This came out shortly after what was that show that everyone loved about drugs? Uh from Albuquerque with Bryan
Breaking
Cranston.
Bad.
Breaking Bad. Yes, sorry.
Yep.
God, I hated that
Yeah, you
show.
had Aaron Paul in there, who's
Yeah.
the lead character in it. And Need for Speed, the games didn't have a ton of story in it because you really didn't care what the story was. Depending on the versions, like Heat and some of the other ones, like there was the Revenge ones, they had some story, but it was really about the cars. This one tries to add a story, and it is a really basic revenge story, and it was garbage. I mean, the acting was garbage, the cinematography was garbage. It was trying to or Fast and the Furious, and it was not fast.
Okay. Hitman.
One or two, like the original one that they did with
I
Timothy
mean, yeah,
Oliphant,
we're just talking
or
about it as a whole. The Hitman
okay,
movies.
so there are two.
Hmm.
They have one with Timothy Oliphant who plays the hitman, which was not a great screenplay, but Timothy Oliphant did his best. And the adaptation was all rightly faithful, but again, the Hitman games, it's hard to adapt because they don't have a singular easy story to tell. But they do play back on Agent 47's story. Then you had another one where you had oh, my brain just turned off. The guy who plays the new Spock, Zachary Quinto. He's in it as the bad guy. I can't remember who plays Agent 47. That one's a little bit better, but it's more transporter than it is Hitman.
Yeah, which was definitely a big critique I remember from that one. Far Cry.
I don't remember a movie being a Far Cry.
Exactly. But there
Uh,
was,
yeah,
apparently,
that tells you right there.
according to
Um,
Wikipedia.
and I don't even know which Far Cry because there's six of them now, and not including Primal and some of the other ones like
Yeah.
New Dawn. So
Max Payne. I actually did watch this. Terrible movie. Never played the games.
But Max Payne's was probably the closest to a true adaptation to a game out of the ones we've talked about so far.
Really?
Um, yes, so that one has Marky Mark
Yeah,
Wahlberg in it,
Mark Wahlberg.
and Milo or what the hell's her name? Oh, my brain just turned off. Jackie from from that Tony
Mila
Show.
Kunis?
Mila Kunis, in it, and essentially Max Payne the game is the Punisher with bullet. And that's what this movie is the Punisher with bullet time.
And like
Um,
demon things. I didn't really
yeah, that
when those came
so
in, like there was no rhyme. Like I didn't understand what was going on. I just got so lost.
so in the game, like in the movie, Max takes drugs to rate the bullet time and to help with pain because it's painkillers. And so he was seeing things as he would do it. And they tried to play that in a little bit more into the movie. Like I said, it was probably the closest to being faithful. It was just a garbage movie.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg was in a lot of those. um,
But hopefully Uncharted's better.
um, Assassin's Creed.
Okay, so Assassin's Creed,
It's
kind of
terrible.
plays, but doesn't play into the same vein as the stories. They have a lot of the same beats where they talk about the machine that I
Yeah,
suddenly can't think of the name of that they use to do it, but they do it differently. So the machine in the game is essentially a VR system, like Sword Art Online's VR system, where you essentially are asleep and uses Z-Waves. Where in this one, which has
Michael
oh
Fassbender.
Michael Fassbender, thank you, in it, it's a whole like rig that you use that like flips you around and things like this. And they spend way too much time in this talking about the the main character who is not the main character from the original first three Assassin's Creed stories. Dominic or Dante or something like that.
Yeah,
Um, it's not him. It's a completely different character for the movie, and uh, they do talk about a little bit of the um, memory leech or the memory bleed that they talk about in the games, where you learn abilities based off of your past selves, the DNA, because it bleeds into your memories out through and gives you those abilities. So
yeah,
that's how they play it. But they spend way too much time in current time and not enough time in the assassin time.
agreed. All right, so I've got three more, and we're gonna start with Warcraft. Um, a
Okay,
fantasy movie that a
Warcraft.
lot of people are very excited about, and there's nothing like inherently horrible about it, but it just
Oh yeah, there is.
having never played the games. I'm having never played the games and just watching the movie. It was just like nah.
Warcraft is essentially the same problem they had with the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Is it's a person that never played the games trying to tell this story, and you don't have the ability of telling that great story because it's someone that didn't care. Ben Foster plays the main bad guy in this game, and it makes it very hard because Ben Foster, as cool as he is outside of being, his character in 310 to Yuma, is not scary. He can't play a terrifying character. And so he's not in this one. You're supposed to have sympathy for the orcs in the movie, and you don't. And the CG was bad, and it was just
CG,
not good.
the CG was bad. A lot of the character beats fell flat. What's the main character? He's from that Vikings show on the History Channel or whatever. Like, I've never really cared for him as an actor, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And he's trying to carry this movie, and then his son dies, and it was just like, oh, I guess that was his son that died, and like stuff happens. Like, again, like the movie's actually pretty long. Actually, I think the director was a huge like fanboy of the game, and he like pitched for a long time to make this, and this was the best he could do to adapt it.
It just like that the movie deserves like that's just the whole concept, the whole story and everything deserves more, and they just didn't get it.
Yeah,
Um Hoping now that Microsoft owns the rights to all of that they can actually put something better together.
yeah. Two more. I'm gonna go with this one because it's a personal favorite of mine. Silent Hill. I love the Silent Hill games. At least I played the first four. I didn't play anything after that, but the first four are incredible. The first Silent Hill movie was an interesting adaptation, not necessarily faithful, but probably in spirit. It was a spiritually faithful adaptation. They made some creative choices that I kind of disagree with, but you know, with what those decisions were, changing the lead from a male to a female, whatever. Like, you're just taking the main character and swapping it out. Like,
Well, the Silent Hill ones, real fast before you go on, the Silent Hill ones, especially where the main character, like the first one with it being Sean Bean and everything else,
mhm.
I was fine with that as an adaptation because though it was not direct, it didn't feel like a direct adaptation to the first or second game. It felt like it fit perfectly in the world of the games.
It yeah. Um, in my mind, it was just like an unnecessary change. It was like that didn't add anything, and for the fan base, it definitely took away. However, with what it was, I think the first one was actually a pretty decent movie. The second one is got like ass scene that's good, but otherwise it's garbage.
I
Uh
see.
yeah, ass scene. um yeah, Silent Hill. I wanted so much more from that as a movie franchise. And who was it? The guy that made the second one. Um, I actually didn't hate him as director. He made another movie, and now I can't remember it. Shoot, what was his name? This is gonna bug me. I'm gonna look it up real quick. Revelations 3D was made by um, Michael J. Bassett, who also made Solomon Kane. That's the one I was trying to think of, which was an enjoyable movie. I actually liked Solomon Kane quite a bit.
Not a clue.
It's enjoyable. It's probably streaming somewhere. Go watch it. Last one, guilty pleasure, Doom.
Yeah. So, we kind of talked about this before we did the last episode a little bit, and yeah, Doom is not faithful at all. Um, but there was aspects of it that were fantastic. Like literally, if they wanted to do that 5 minute scene where Carl Urban comes back and just goes on that first person shooter tirade and just starts destroying things as if he was Doom Guy, totally fine with that.
Yeah.
That was hands down the best part of the movie. And you know what's sad? If you go look at that cast, so you have Carl Urban, fantastic actor.
Oh yeah.
You have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in there, who has become a very good actor.
Yeah.
One of the, if not the most highest paid actor of like the current century right now, like the current time. And then the actress in there, the one that plays Carl Urban's sister, it's Rosamund Pike uh, from like Gone Girl and a bunch of other stuff that she's fantastic in.
Yeah.
And this movie was garbage. But that one I'm gonna give more on the directing and writing, and even on the writing to a little aspect. because or lower aspect because they had aspects of what could have been a great adaptation.
Yeah.
Because they went to Mars, they opened up the thing, and they found the demons. Like it's all the stories of Doom,
Yeah.
but and what the hell? Not
Yeah.
the hell is in the game, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was like they started with Doom and they were like, how about we just make Resident Evil fan fiction based off of the terrible Resident Evil adaptations that have nothing to do with the game.
I know it's like as someone called like, hey, Paul, you want to come and film like a couple of weeks for this for me? I got to go hang out with my wife.
And I do have to add one more thing. That 5 minute scene, first person mode, was amazing. And yes, I think we do need a Doom movie that is 100% that. And if you think that that won't work, I have news for you. It's been done. It works, and it was amazing. If you haven't seen, oh shit, now I'm blanking on it.
Hardcore Henry.
Yes, Hardcore Henry. Wow, what a freaking delightful movie. That movie,
Right.
nonstop, start to finish, enjoyable. I loved everything about that movie. That is what Doom should be. And the
And I
Doom
guarantee you,
sequel,
Hardcore Henry.
fucking horrible.
I guarantee you, Hardcore Henry 2 is probably like a quarter of the price that it costed them to make Doom.
Oh yeah,
So they would have made a ton more money and been able to do something fantastic.
yeah,
With that. So if you guys want to go see Doom instead, go watch Hardcore Henry.
yeah, absolutely. Um, well, we are over time, Brian. There are so many video game adaptations. I just tried to get a list of a lot of the cream of the crop. There are so many that we weren't able to talk about, that we're not going to talk about. We are going to leave this topic at that. But we do want to hear from you. If you guys give us enough feedback, maybe we can revisit this. Because we are going to finish off this little mini series by reviewing Uncharted, the movie with, I cannot remember names today. What the freak?
And
Tom
moving,
Holland. Tom
Tom Holland,
Holland and Mark
Mark Wahlberg,
Wahlberg. Yeah.
Antonio Banderas.
Yeah. Wow, I'm
So
bad today. Anyways, we'll be reviewing that for you guys next time. We're super excited to give you our thoughts. And if if you have any feedback, hit us up. Facebook.com/BeHeroMedia, Instagram.com/BeHeroMedia.
on Twitter at BeHeroMedia, as well as everything that is BeHeroMedia at BeHeroMedia.com. Also, if we missed any of your favorite bad video game adaptations, please put them down here in the comments on YouTube. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you can always see when we're dropping something new onto this great series. So, all
Exactly.
right, Tom, anything else before we go?
That is everything, Brian.
All right. So, for you guys, I have two things to remember this time. One, go watch Double Dragons. I promise you'll enjoy it. And two, go out there and
And be
be
a
a
hero.
hero. Have a good night, guys.